the apartheid
So what would you like to
allow
see happen,
Palestinians.
Hassan?
Do you not understand the
on,
English
everybody?
language?
I'm Hassan Piker. This is HasanDaily broadcast coming to you live from not so sunny, hazy, maybe a little cloudy California, Los Angeles. Folks, we're live and alive, and I hope all the boys, girls, and MBs are having a fantastic one because today's a beautiful day. Today's a wonderful day. Today is Thursday. Thirsty Thursday, folks. That's right. It's Thirsty Thursday. Obviously, we got the FBI motives and FBI narratives that were undermined last night by Ken KLIPPENSTEIN's fantastic reporting on the background of the shooter, the anti-ICE shooter, right? Shouts out to Ken KLIPPENSTEIN, as always, for doing fantastic reporting. He went and he got anonymously interviewed some of the friends, lifelong friends, really, of the shooter, and he revealed that the ways in which the FBI has concocted this like left-wing anti-fascist terrorism narrative is not great. Exclusive, the ICE shooter's politics. Joshua John's friends speak. The deadly sniper attack on a Dallas ICE facility this morning seems straightforward, with anti-ICE engraved on the unspent shell casing recovered from the scene, per the FBI. But after interviewing several of the alleged shooter's former friends, the picture isn't so clear. Within minutes of the shooting, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X, while the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind this attack. See photo below. I need you guys to understand something. The FBI should not be doing this for two different reasons. One, in this circumstance, the investigation is irrelevant, really, because like the shooter died, right? He killed himself. But in situations where there's an ongoing court case, you're not supposed to taint the evidence by immediately coming out in public and creating a narrative framing around the situation. That's not something you can do. That's not something you should be doing in general, okay? The other societal impact of the FBI doing this like very clearly biased immediate evidence farming is making people less reliant on the FBI as a reasonable actor. This is genuinely a problem. If you believe that we have to be a nation of rules and laws, and you have to have like at least some commitment to these institutions that are going to be infallible to a certain degree, they're going to abide by an incredibly high standard when they're doing these sorts of investigations, like you can't be doing shit like this. I hate to sound like a liberal, but this is a ridiculous thing to do. You can't be running around and being like, this is a bad guy, and I found out exactly what their biases are, and I'll have you know, it might come as a surprise, but the shooter was exactly the opposite of my worldview and was very clearly acting out in a way that I want to, you know, in all of the groups that I want to silence and suppress. You can't do that. It's even worse in the Tyler Robinson case because the shooter is not dead. So there is not only an investigation that will be conducted, but also a court case that will happen in the aftermath of this, right? You can't do this with Luigi Mangione in the way that the law enforcement agencies and people in positions of power have done. This actually taints the jury pool. You're creating an environment, a narrative bias before due process takes place. It's grounds for a mistrial. Like, what the fuck are we doing? This is so ridiculous. Obviously, it's not going to happen, right? Given the severity of the crime. But like under normal circumstances, that is unironically what would take place. Being in this administration just feels like a race to the bottom. Everyone is trying to get out their Twitter posts as fast as possible for clout. Literally an administration of influence. I know you can't be doing that. You can't be doing that, little baby. If you want the FBI to be like a serious institution that people still respect, you can't be doing that. Get Kash Patel fucking out of there, man. What the hell? President Trump responded to the shooting by blaming the radical left, vowing to sign another executive order to dismantle what he called domestic terrorism networks. This comes at the heels of another executive order he signed this week, designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, as I previously reported. I have been briefed on the deadly shooting. We already read this yesterday, but he said, I've been briefed on the deadly shooting. It's Antifa. You can't compare ICE agents to Nazis. That's completely unacceptable. All this stuff, right? Vice President J.D. Vance, meanwhile, says, we know that this person was politically motivated, pointing both to the inscriptions and some evidence we have that's not yet public. On the off chance the shooting wasn't what it looked like, I reached out to people who knew the gunman, 29-year-old Joshua John. 3 who knew him since at least middle school and agreed to speak to me on the condition that I not name them, corroborating their friendship with photos and other records. Their accounts paint the picture of someone with a vaguely libertarian bent who despised both major parties and politicians generally, including Trump, but who didn't engage with politics beyond that. He preferred edgy humor, video games, and the message board 4chan, all of which he became increasingly steeped in as he withdrew from social life as well as their own friendships several years ago, they said. None of his former friends believed the anti-ICE inscription could possibly be sincere, feeling such a serious political statement was anathema to who John was. His humor was deeply ironic, often offensive, and aggressive to the point of alienation. Classic leftist site 4chan. Before you say classic leftist site 4chan, there are leftists who are on 4chan as well, okay? That's true. It's not just right-wingers, even though it's most famous for right-wingers, and the likelihood that you're a right-winger, if you're on poll, especially you're most likely a right-winger, but that doesn't mean that there aren't leftists on 4chan, okay? Just remember that. Weren't you a 4chaner? No, I was not. What the fuck? He was most certainly an edgelord, an irony guy, one friend said. Edgelord is online speak for someone who doesn't like, who likes to espouse edgy nihilistic views. Asked about the inscription on the bullet, the friend said, Josh was an edgelord who wanted someone to get blamed. I think he tried his best to write something goofy to rile people up. Another friend showed me a Facebook post describing how John had flooded his friend's comment section with rape jokes. Playful shock humor, the friend said. Fucking insane. Hey, man, that's just playful shock humor. John's profile on the gaming platform Steam showed the vast amounts of time he spent playing video games, particularly shooters, more than 6,000 hours on Rust, which, oof, red flag. You know, no disrespect to Rust, but bit of a red flag there, you know. 3,000 on Team Fortress 2, 1,000 on Left 4 Dead 2. He even found time to play 3.5 hours in the past 2 weeks, the account shows. Among the dozen or so usernames he used, one was reading, #impeachment. When I asked if this wasn't a clear reference to anti-Trump politics, his friends recoiled at the idea that he would express opposition to Trump so sincerely and straightforwardly and said they saw it as a part of his broader ironic persona, poking fun at the anti-Trump resistance types. Hanky Bob, clan tag. Users also played as Sam I Am. That said, one friend recalled that when Trump first came to power, Jan was not a fan, though he had contempt for mainstream politicians in general. His friends say he had more of a libertarian bent, with one recalling an interest in the libertarian figure Ron Paul. You know what's really funny about the ideological motives that people try to ascribe to, you know, instances of political violence, like people who have engaged in acts of political violence, is that we have such a silly view of the average American, which I always point to when talking about the median voter. Identifying the politics of a median voter is a virtually fucking possible. It's just so silly because most people do not subscribe to straight ticket blue Dem or straight ticket right-wing Republican voting. There is more consolidation ideologically within the right as opposed to the liberal side of things, for sure. But having said that, even then, it is virtually impossible to understand what the average American, especially the average American that doesn't vote, even though he is eligible to vote, is genuinely impossible. There are many people in here that if someone from the outside was looking at your social media profiles, they would be like, what the fuck does this guy believe? I don't understand it. I can't associate it with any sort of like mainline established political ideology. Still, the friend who recounted Jan's dislike of Trump insisted that there was at least a kernel of seriousness to the username. If it was ironic, it's half irony, where you're half kidding, half serious, just in case, he said. He was never really into politics, especially not politicians, said another friend who had known Jan since age 8. He was into politics only in the 4chan sense. Contrarian, provocative, boundary pushing for laughs, not conviction. 4chan, the anonymous message board where provocation and irony are the coin of the realm, was apparently one of Jan's favorite haunts. His abrasive humor is where his friends describe his opinions on him diverge the most, with some describing it as amusing, but others as grating, especially as his online persona bled into real life. I mostly stopped talking to him when he took his 4chan irony stuff into daily interactions, one friend told me. He was becoming unbearable. Once he dropped out of college, he had no obligation to be social, and none of us reached out due to his edgelord behavior. Oh my Lord. You know what's really funny? A lot of mainstream voices, especially on the right, constantly are now trying to point the finger of blame at like edgy nihilism and like political violence in my direction. And so much of what I try to do is to snap people out of this. Like literally, if people come in here and watch me for half a day, they will realize that a big chunk of what I am combating is exactly this: the social isolation that comes from finding yourself steeped within like incel, extremely online, irony poisoned, nihilistic circles that basically push your real life social interactions into the background as your online persona under the guise of anonymity becomes more and more your real world persona as well. And it causes people around you to go, ew, gross, get the fuck away from me. This is a big part of the reason why I always say touch grass. This is a big part of the reason why I always say be fucking normal. I wasn't able to find anyone who, with insight into Jan's more recent views, something that his friend said was unsurprising given his withdrawal from social life over the past few years. If you're having trouble finding people besides immediate family who knew him, that's part of the story, one friend said. Every mutual friend drifted away over that kind of edgelord behavior. A fledgling version of Jan's humor appears in the following YouTube video since removed from when he was a high schooler, a tongue-in-cheek parody of tech advice videos. Hello there, Facebook user. Are you tired of scrolling through your Facebook feed mindlessly? Well, there's a solution. You can unlike all your crappy pages. The following audio recording of Jan bombing at stand-up comedy was shared with me. It drew a comparison by one friend to the 2019 Joker film starring Joaquin Phoenix as an off-putting loner who also tried and failed at comedy. The film culminates in a scene in which the Joker gets his revenge on the entertainment world by gunning down the host of a popular late-night TV show. The audio from his attempted stand-up routine where he bombs now resonates uncannily with Joker, the friend said. Ironically, Jan's contempt for Trump and the major political parties has bestowed them with one of the most intensely partisan news cycles in recent memory. In this sense, the joke is on him. And all of us too. This still doesn't mean that the shooter has no profiles in or has no ideological profile that could be left slanted in any capacity, in any way, shape, or form, for the record. But this, paired up with the fact that the FBI investigation that has yielded no results, both in the case of Tyler Robinson and also in the case of this shooter as well, to any sort of like left adjacent groups, like left adjacent associations, makes it much harder for the government to develop a profile that would justify significant incursions on free speech. Do you want me to actually look at the fucking failed bomb stand-up routine that was audio? I guess it could like show us a little bit more of the background, but it's from 2019.
Was it the Dallas Comedy Club last time? All right, so I'm going to start out with talking about something pretty serious. My buddy was talking to me the other day about reality TV, and he didn't like it too much. He said reality TV should never be played on TV, and I was all taken aback, like, whoa, dude, come on. I have some extremely bad insecurity issues about myself. They constantly eat me up alive. And reality TV is a remedy for that. That's a perfect remedy. And it applies to me.
I'll be honest, so right off the jump, just hearing him speak, this is more consistent with like loner, antisocial personality disordered, like socially malignant shooters that we have seen in the past, as opposed to someone like Tyler Robinson, who very clearly still had friends at the point of the alleged assassination of Charlie Kirk that he allegedly participated in. Do you see what I mean? This reminds me more of like a Thomas Crook style individual where their politics are indecipherable and it just like kind of doesn't make sense. As far as like Luigi Mangione or Tyler Robinson goes, their background does not correspond to like the average profile of like a school shooter or a mass shooter, a person engaging in like a horrific act of violence. This seems to be more evidence that the political shooting is supplanting the school shooting as a path to notoriety for suicidal and nihilistic, socially maladjusted individuals. Yes, this is my argument as well. This is what I am seeing as well, especially because these things have a tendency to create copycats. In the past, and I said this yesterday, in the past, when people wanted to make a name for themselves, when someone was like a socially maladjusted, isolated, alienated, sometimes mentally ill person, right? And they had suicidal ideation. Instead of doing suicide by cop, they would go and engage in a mass shooting in an area, in an environment that they've designed for themselves that have tremendous control over their lives. If you're young it's the school, right? The school is restrictive. If you are older, it's your workplace, right? It's your resentment. It's the resentment that you experience that you associate with a hierarchy that holds you back. But I think a lot of these people have now realized that given how much school shootings have become commonplace, it doesn't actually end up getting you the broad recognition and the constant back and forth. Like, what's the reason why he did this? What's the reason why he actually, let's try to identify the motives. Let's like dig into the background of the shooter. Because like the evidence itself is built in. I mean, look at the Annunciation Church shooter, right? Right-wing profile, insane, highlighted a bunch of fucking white nationalist mass shooters. That was a story that was around for like 2.5 days. And then people made their partisan motives, people made their partisan framework very clear in that process, and then they just fucking moved on. So you don't get the same level of elevated profile from stuff like that. So then you see, I think, people engaging in acts of political violence potentially, because they think this will allow people to, this will give them more notoriety. And if I were to like try and dive into the mindset of a person like this is for them a way to chase fame, a way to have a semblance of control over their lives when they feel like they've completely lost all power. They have no way of developing autonomy. They feel alienated. They feel isolated. They don't have any friends. They don't have any purpose in life. And they feel like this is a way to become powerful in their own minds. This like sick, twisted way to try and get notoriety and therefore some kind of power even after they die. The more high profile shootings take place and the more this kind of violence we are desensitized to, the more people will try to increase the intensity in the aftermath of that, especially if people in positions of power feel fearful. They will greatly clamp on those who they believe are responsible for this kind of radicalization. And it'll never be the systems themselves that are radicalizing people. It'll never be like the cost of paywalling healthcare for many Americans that universalizes that experience for them. It'll always be people like myself. You know, it'll always be a media figure that played a role in this. And for the Republicans, it's very clear. It's not just people like myself either. It's also the Democrats as a whole. It's anyone that considers what Donald Trump is doing to be Nazi behavior, fascist behavior. Yeah, the irony, of course, is that the increasing frequency of these kinds of violence, these kinds of violent incidents, also leads to an overall desensitization to these kinds of violent incidents, and therefore it causes people that are chasing infamy by engaging in this incredibly violent act to not even get that infamy anyway.